The question is, what should you do if you receive a notice from the police about speeding and you can't remember who was driving the vehicle? Well, let's assume for the moment that you are the registered keeper of a vehicle, and we'll also assume you're not a company because rules for companies are a little bit different. The notice that you normally receive is a notice to provide driver details, in fact, a requirement to provide driver details. It usually comes along with an NIP or a notice of intended prosecution. So when you receive this notice, the notice says that you must provide the details of the driver. And if you don't provide the details of the driver, you commit an offence. Now, there is a defence to that charge, and that defence is if you can prove that you couldn't find out who was driving and you used reasonable diligence, then that might provide you with a defence to the charge. So what does that mean if you don't know who was driving? Well, the first thing it means is that you've got to use reasonable diligence to find out, and you've got to be able to prove that you use reasonable diligence as well. So that means checking things like emails, checking text messages, checking calendars, working out where you were, working out who else could have been using the vehicle, asking the other people who could have been using the vehicle as well. And so once you've done all of that and you've exhausted absolutely every possibility, then hopefully you've identified who was driving and you can fill in the notice and send it back to the police. If you still can't identify who was driving, then all you can do is respond to the police, tell them about the steps that you've used, and inform them that you can't identify the driver and why you can't identify the driver. You should know that the police can be quite sceptical about these things, and quite often that kind of response will result in the police charging you with failing to provide driver details. If you go to court and you get convicted of that, it means a fine and 6 penalty points, which is quite often worse than the original speeding offence, particularly if it was a lowish speed. Now, sometimes you might come up with a scenario where there are a few people who might have been driving, so it might be you and somebody else or a couple of other people if they've been using the vehicle. In those circumstances, you'll be expected to provide the details of all of those other drivers to the police, but know that they will also receive notices from the police, and you could end up in a situation where several people end up getting charged with failing to provide driver details if all of that investigation gets nowhere. Of course, if it's genuine and there were genuine reasons for you being unable to know who was driving, then that's fine. But the police and certainly magistrates' courts, if cases like this go to trial, can be quite sceptical, as I've said before, and the consequences of non-compliance with the notice are quite stiff.